Greetings. Welcome to Dr. English's Book Lovers Book Club. I'm Dr. English and I teach English. Today I'm taking another step back to do some young adult literature, and I went back in time to read Holes by Louis Sachar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, Sachar. This is one of the books I read many, many years ago, and I just absolutely fell in love with this book. I love this with all my heart. It's still one of my all-time favorites, and I was so excited when the movie came out because I thought, well, we'll see. No, is the movie going to do the book justice? And it did. So it's another one that I think if you haven't seen the movie, read the book first. But I think the movie really stayed pretty close to the story. So one of the things I like about this is how he puts two time periods. There's a story from the past that's associated with it, and it's like related to Stanley. And I just think how he kind of gives little hints all the way throughout. You have to track that. And I love books that make me, think and have to like really think about, oh, wait, here's a little clue. And so I really I love stories like that where there's, some references to the past. The one that comes really, that I'm thinking of right now is, the Midnight at the Electric, because that book was it's one of my all-time favorite, and that was kind of science fiction futuristic, but the author was tying the past with the future, and I just love that. And this one is like tying the past to the present in the story. And Stanley's such a great character. I just feel like he really did a good job, really, developing Stanley and all the other characters too. They're just like, it's like I'm living in Omaha, and it's the home of Boys Town and Father Flanagan. A lot of people don't even know who Father Flanagan is anymore, even people in Omaha. But he started Boys Town, and his motto was, he ain't heavy, he's my brother. There's an old black and white movie about Boys Town too that's really wonderful if you ever have a chance to watch it. But one of the things that Father Flanagan believed was there's no such thing as a bad boy, because he only took boys at that time. Now there are girls there, so there's no such thing as a bad boy or a bad girl. And that's what I think about these boys that are here at this Camp Green Lake, and they're being exploited in every sense of the word. but but I just think he did a great job with all the characters, but in particular he did a really good job with Stanley. And I think if I was teaching creative writing, I would definitely, if I was helping somebody teach to write a young adult fiction book, I would have them take a look at this, to show the beauty, and the beauty and the brevity of how he developed the characters in this novel, because I just think it's great. And this just the storyline is, and like I said, I am a big fan of the connection of the past and to give the reader a little bit of hints and not just explicitly say. You kind of have to think about it. It reminds me a lot of reading Nancy Drew books in the past, because I was addicted to those when I was a kid. I read everything in the library. I suppose if I went back now, I'd say, oh, these are not very well written, but I love mysteries, and I loved, getting those clues and putting it together. And I still like mysteries and trying to figure out who did it, and I'm a big, huge fan of Columbo for that reason. My husband watches it all the time, and I've always think you've seen this 1,000 times, but it's the idea of like, oh, who did it and how did they do it? So, but yeah, so this is one of my all-time favorite books. I just love the way it's written, and this is the excerpt I'm going to read to you because I love the character of Catherine Barlow, so I just think it's great. Um, it was said that Green Lake was heaven on earth, and that Miss Catherine's spice peaches were food for the angels. Catherine Barlow was the town's only school teacher. She taught in an old one-room schoolhouse. It was old even then. The roof leaked, the windows wouldn't open, the door hung crooked on its bent hinges. She was a wonderful teacher, full of knowledge and full of life. The children loved her. She taught classes in the evening for adults, and many of the adults loved her as well. She was very pretty. Her classes were often full of young men who were a lot more interested in the teacher than they were in getting an education. But all they ever got was an education. One such young man was Trout Walker. His real name was Charles Walker, but everyone called him Trout because his 2 feet smelled like a couple of dead fish. That wasn't entirely Trout's fault. He had an incurable foot fungus. In fact, it was the same foot fungus that 110 years later would afflict the famous ball player Clyde Livingston. But at least Clyde Livingston showered every day. I take a bath every Sunday morning, Trout would brag, whether I need it or not. Most everyone in the town of Green Lake expected Miss Catherine to marry Trout Walker. He was the son of the richest man in the county. His family owned most of the peach trees and all the land on the east side of the lake. Trout often showed up at night school but never paid attention. He talked in class and was disrespectful of the students around him. He was loud and stupid. A lot of men in town were not educated. That didn't bother Miss Catherine. She knew they'd spent most of their lives working on farms and ranches and hadn't had much schooling. That was why she was there, to teach them. But Trout didn't want to learn. He seemed to be proud of his stupidity. "How'd you like to take a ride on my new boat this Saturday?" he asked her one evening after class. "No, thank you," said Miss Catherine. "We've got a brand new boat," he said. "You don't even have to row it." "Yes, I know," said Miss Catherine. Everyone in town had seen and heard the Walkers' new boat. It made a horrible loud noise and spewed ugly black smoke over the beautiful lake. Trot had always gotten everything he ever wanted. He found it hard to believe that Miss Catherine had turned him down. He pointed his finger at her and said, "No one ever says no to Charles Walker." "I believe I just did," said Catherine Barlow. I love a strong woman, of course, too. Um, so that was a little bit of a dip back into the past. I think it's an important part of the novel. And so if you have not read Holes or seen the movie, I highly recommend it. And this is one I would definitely teach in a creative writing class about how to do characterization, and I would do it to think about how to do the plot and to interject the past with the present. And so I would definitely teach this in middle school. This is a middle school book, and I think it probably is taught in some middle schools. I definitely, I would say even sixth graders would, enjoy reading Holes, and I'm sure there are plenty of sixth graders who've done it independently. But I would say sixth, seventh, or eighth, but probably sixth grade, I would teach this as a classroom text. I think it'd be a really good experience because a lot of times students in elementary don't do the whole class novel. They might do short stories or short stories, or short stories, or just like excerpts from things, which I don't believe in. I will say right here and right now, I've never been a fan of students just reading excerpts from novels. I don't understand that. I think it's worth your time to read the whole entire novel. And so I would love to teach this to sixth graders, like one of the first whole novels that they might read as a whole group and talk about, just talk about it, but also talk about what the author is doing. Because I think you can start that when students are younger, because it helps lend expertise at interpretation. If you can understand what the author's doing, it helps them to get insight into some of the inferences in the story. So I really think that I would do it in sixth grade. And as far as middle school and upper middle school, high school, I still think it's a book you should keep on your shelf. I think there are people that are in high school, ninth and 10th grade, who would love doing it as a book group, or a novel panel. I think they'd have a lot of fun with this book. And so I highly recommend it. And I just think everybody should read this, because it's really it's a social statement too about the dynamics of a social group, and the dynamics of an outcast social group, and what that looks like. And they may be outcast from one part of society, but not in their own. They really shouldn't have been, I guess, in some ways. But it's really a good sociological kind of study too, that we might understand something a bit better about the dynamics of young boys in school situations, because they're all at this juvenile delinquency center for a reason. But you wonder if the reason they're there is that they're not bad boys, is what I'm getting at. So I like this as even a sociological kind of study too. So So Holes by Louis Sachar. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I didn't look it up how to pronounce it. But it is the winner of a Newbery Award. And it certainly did deserve it. So thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye.